My name is Katie Rich. I am a DOC candidate at Michigan State University in educational technology, but I came to that work with a background in research-based curriculum development, primarily in mathematics, but also in computer science at the elementary level.
And I'm Carla Strickland. I consider myself a STEMinist. I work in diverse primary and secondary classrooms from my native Trinidad and Tobago to the United States. Teaching students, coaching, and delivering professional development to teachers and writing curriculum. In the last several years, my colleagues and I have been researching integrated computer science education. Katie is one of my favorite people, and we co-authored Chapter 20, Testing and Debugging.
So this introduction to our chapter, as you might expect, sort of focuses on why it's important to test and debug your programs. But then we move into two other major points that we hope that teachers take away from reading our chapter. So first, we include a collection of strategies for debugging. We've worked really hard at finding the right level of specificity for these. On one hand, we wanted to make sure we were sort of unpacking the process of debugging a bit, demystifying it, trying to make it less of a black box. We know debugging can be frustrating, especially for beginners and for teachers who are just starting, but we promise there are ways to think about debugging that don't just involve staring really hard and squinting your eyes and hoping to spot the mistake. There are other strategies that are much more actionable and teachable than that. And so we came up with a collection of these. Here are a few that are included in our chapter that we hope act as a sort of toolkit for debugging for you and your students. And on the other hand, while we were trying to get some specificity in there, we were also careful to try to articulate them at a level that made sure they were applicable across a range of platforms and languages. So we hope it's a useful toolkit for you, wherever you are on your CS journey. If you're teaching little ones, which are in primary school, we'd like, or older students, text or block-based languages. If you're thinking about debugging for the first time, or if you're coming in looking for a fresh perspective.
Given the amount of time we've spent honing our teacher-facing voice as curriculum developers and working with teachers, and knowing that they love an immediate takeaway, we also made sure to include tips on how to create a classroom culture that supports debugging. Much has and can be said about culture in computing, but we can be sure that as teachers, we spend time and effort to explicitly or implicitly create and foster a positive culture in our classrooms, regardless of subject. For students to engage productively in debugging, it's important to be deliberate about reducing the stigma associated with making errors. Often making mistakes is positioned as oppositional to efficiency. We advocate for a transition which frames errors as productive, an inevitable and important part of the learning process. This classroom culture change is in fact crucial to the success of debugging as a practice. While students may learn specific strategies in isolation, as programs become more sophisticated, multiple types of errors may occur, requiring more than just a single strategy. Attention to the classroom culture then makes a more hospitable atmosphere or environment for these strategies to work in concert with each other. One example of how error stigma might manifest that we see a lot with young kids is the tendency for them to completely throw out their buggy code and start over, instead of re-engaging with the code they've already written. We believe that in a productive debugging culture, students may be more willing to persist in actually using the specific strategies they've learned to successfully debug their programs.
So those are our two big takeaways. As longtime friends, as collaborators, if you've probably picked up, we deeply enjoyed writing this chapter together. We want to thank Shuchi for the opportunity and this general community for being so welcoming to us as relative newbies. And we hope you enjoy the chapter.